right, 24 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. We love our local theater. The Ocala Civic Theater is such a gem for our community. It's usually very, very affordable. $25 usually, right, to go to any of the shows, Robin?
It's wonderful.
You go to New York, you see something just as good, but it costs you a lot more. Okay, I don't have my notes here. Lourelene.
Correct.
Snedeker?
Snedeker. Lourelene Snedeker.
I knew you knew that I was going to mispronounce it.
Everyone does. It's quite all right.
Nice to meet you. And you're here to talk about the show called I Love a Piano?
Correct. That's exactly right.
But you don't play piano.
Well, I have played the piano.
Oh, okay,
I just don't do it professionally.
Oh, okay. So tell me, I'm a fan of songwriters in general.
Right.
I really am. I've always been attracted to the person who created the song. And Irving Berlin has always been one of those. Whenever I hear a story about, how he wrote White Christmas or something like that,
right,
or that kind of thing. It's not really how he wrote it, but what happened when he wrote it, I guess. So.
Well, the interesting thing about Irving Berlin is that, and it follows actually the course of our production, he wrote from the early 1910 all the way through till the end of the 50s. And it has been said that he is not part of the lexicon of our American songbook. He is the lexicon.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what?
He is the lexicon of our American songbook. As a matter of fact, during the holidays, while we were rehearsing, I would be in the mall periodically grabbing a Christmas gift or whatever, and over the intercom in every store, I would hear repeatedly numbers that he wrote that are still being played today.
And so what is the show exactly? What are we going to see?
The show traces a single piano going through 50 years or more of the lives of the American people, which is what Irving Berlin wrote about. A lot of composers like Cole Porter, for example, he wrote for the sophisticates, for the, most of his material appealed to the wealthy or those that were privileged. Irving Berlin wrote for the common man. And so all of these numbers that come through are either, relationship things for the common man, the service during the military, it covers the entire spectrum of American lives. And that's what each section of this show is. They're little scenes in each period that depict how the piano in their lives, and therefore Irving Berlin's music, affect each one of these little gatherings, groups, either familial or work-related. And it's funny, it's sad at times, it's very exhilarating at others, and it's tracing the piano and Irving Berlin's music through all these American lives.
Is any actor portraying Irving Berlin on stage?
No.
No, okay.
No.
So it's just about the songs themselves.
It's about the songs themselves.
Was
That's
he
correct.
A lyricist and a composer, or one?
No, he wrote both the lyrics and the music. That's correct.
Yeah, I thought so.
Had his own publishing company, ultimately, anyway.
Is that right? Can you imagine what that was like back in those days, though?
Well, yes, exactly.
Because publishing, I'm from the music world also, and of course nowadays it's all recordings. But in his day, correct me if I'm wrong, but it really was more about the written music.
It was. Tin Pan Alley, exactly. And getting that music into the American public's hand, which is kind of the part of what the first scene is all about in the show.
And so what, there would be guys, I knew a guy, believe it or not.
Songhawkers.
Yes, I knew a guy who was one of them.
Yeah.
He's the father of a friend. He's now got to be 90 years old, lives in Naples. But he was one of those guys who went door to door, whatever, with sheet music, saying, "Hey, I got a new song by whatever."
Right, exactly right. Songhawkers. That's exactly what they were.
And then I correct me if I'm wrong about this. I think one of the things that separated the Irving Berlins from somebody maybe who was highbrow is that if you had a piano in your house, you wanted to be able to play it. You didn't want something that was so hard to play it was impossible to play.
Exactly.
But look how beautiful it is. It just shows you don't need 100 million notes.
And it will be surprising to the people who come to see the show, and I hope, of course, that you all do. But surprising at the number of musical numbers that you know,
Yeah.
that you don't know.
I'm
you
wondering
know.
what I know that I don't know is his, though.
Yeah, there are almost 60 numbers in the course of the show.
Really?
6 actors do the material. Originally, Ray Roderick and Michael Beckley, who were the authors, in 2002, I think, wrote this really enormous version of I Love a Piano and did with cast of thousands at the Denver Theater Center. And I think they realized that they needed to tone it down. So in 2003, at a theater in Florida called Florida Stage, doesn't exist anymore, but they did nothing but new material. They took this enormous musical they'd created and pared it down to 6 people, which is what you're going to see when you come see
Wow,
this
I
production.
just love this conversation.
And will the costumes reflect the era of the
The costumes reflect the era. The settings reflect the era. It's a very complicated but incredibly sweet piece of material, and I think it has something for. I think kids love it. There's a lot of dance work to it. There's not as much dialogue as you would find in most musicals,
Right,
but you
right.
don't need it because the songs express and move you along to the next.
Is it doing?
To the
Is
next
it doing
place.
like Moulin Rouge did, where it took songs and made a story out of it?
That is correct.
Okay.
So each one of these little encapsulated stories of a period.
Right.
You get to know the characters. Some of them are very fun. Some of them are very stodgy. It's very sweet character studies in
I'm
each
looking
era.
forward to it.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
very fun.
I'm sure Robin and I will go see it together, right, Robin?
And, oh, sure. And how did you decide which characters sang what song?
Well, I didn't decide that. The authors did, actually. And there are patterns for each one of the characters. We have 3 couples. A very young couple in their 20s, a couple that's probably 35, and then a couple that's, say, 50 or older. And their individual characters have specific characteristics. There's a woman who's very much an Eve Arden. Okay.
Oh,
A
I
lot of
like
your
her.
audience isn't going to know who that is.
I do. She's
but,
wonderful.
It's like brassy and intelligent and very sure of herself. And while her individual character changes in each little scene, much of those same characteristics still play for her personas as she goes through time. We have a little ingenue who sings all of the top soprano material, and she has an opportunity for slight character changes and adjustments, but she still has the same basic core characteristics from one era to the next. It's great fun.
The show's called I Love a Piano, and we're speaking to Lourelene Snedeker.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? And you are the director of the show.
I am.
Do you? Is this something you couldn't? I mean, how does a director get chosen? Do you have to audition?
No. I actually kind of came across this by accident. When I told you that the authors had changed it from the large-scale musical to the small one, I was working at this theater in Florida that developed the small scale. So
gotcha.
I actually did the piece with the authors as director and music director,
Oh, wow.
paring the piece down. So when this came up, I'm sure you probably have interviewed Michael Edwards. He's done some directing work for Ocala Civic.
Certainly.
And he and I are old. I hesitate to use that word, but we've known each other for
We use that word, too.
countless numbers of years, and we have been acting partners all over the country for varying things. And I was sitting next to him when, I'll be frank, he offered Michael, Mary Britt from Ocala offered Michael the role, and he was busy and said, well, for Pete's sake, Lourelene's done the show, so have a conversation with her, and that's how I ended up coming to
that's
direct
nice.
here.
That is really nice. So what kind of challenges does this kind of a show present that another show might not present?
I told the cast that not only was this a weight loss show, and I'll explain that in a minute, but this was going to be the hardest thing they'd ever done, because when you do Les Miserables, or you do Mame, or you do a big scale musical, I don't care if you're the lead, you have scenes where you're not on. You have quiet moments where you can get your head together and, and prepare for the next bit or whatever. In this case, these are 6 people who literally run the entire show. If they get off, it's for a 30-second costume change.
Oh, wow. 30 seconds.
They are, the first time we ran the first act, they were huffing and puffing like they'd run 26 miles. So it's difficult because there's harmonies all the way through it. Most of them are all involved in the first act. There are some solo pieces, but a lot of it is all very tight harmony, tight choral work, a lot of dance numbers. They are on the stage the greater majority of the evening. There is no let up. So from their standpoint, it's incredibly difficult. And then from a directorial and choreographic standpoint, you have to create scenes that the audience is going to enjoy, having the same 6 people and, create different environments for them, for all of this scene work.
I guess this is a question more for the authors, I guess, but since they're not here, maybe you could answer.
Okay.
I wonder if it's almost like putting a puzzle together with pieces that don't belong together, and then you make sense out of it somehow. Because, for example, when the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, I think, whatever, they tried to write a story based on that, and it didn't work. They made a movie out of it. It didn't work. But meanwhile, Moulin Rouge works wonderfully.
Right. Well, the fun thing about this is the use of the piano, because we start out with a beautiful antique piano that you follow from one particular era to the next. That is the consistent line of the piece. And, we have young people who predominantly have spent their theatrical education as a belter. Someone who belts the music, which is a particular vocal style. Well, you don't belt Irving Berlin. So they've had to modify their vocal skills to accomplish what we need in this. So that has been an education and something different.
Wow, I can hear that too as you're talking about it. I never thought about that. He's not a belter.
No.
And when the orchestra is on, sometimes the Civic Theater has the orchestra in the pit, and sometimes they have them in the back behind a screen.
Right.
Where will the orchestra be?
The orchestra's actually in the rear. So much of what happens in this show is so close to the audience. And there are steps and platforms and things, and the orchestra is actually not only behind the platform, but you won't really see too much of them because they're on the main floor, and they've got platforming in front of them that will sort of obscure them.
When you have an actor or actress who is great at singing and great at dancing, but has a hard time doing both at once, what do you do?
Well, we've worked a lot with, I have one actor who really was enthusiastic about coming to the auditions and doing the work, but did not have a lot of skill. And I personally am also an acting coach, and so part of my directorial duties is to make the actor as comfortable as possible and obviously produce work that the audience is going to enjoy. So you do tweak, you do talk to them, and you do adjust what they are doing to, increase their skill level on the stage.
Okay, I've heard something, and maybe you can clear up what I think is a false rumor.
Okay.
But maybe it's a true rumor, too.
Okay.
The rumor is that Irving Berlin only played the black notes. I say that's not possible. Listen to his music. There's more than just black notes going on there. So what is? Have you heard that before?
I have, but I'm not sure I contributed it to Irving Berlin. I know that Cole Porter, for example, only played in one key, and then other people would transpose material. I don't know about Irving Berlin. I have to say I don't know I can't deny that,
Yeah.
but I don't know that that's actually true. The music that is in this show are a multitude of keys, so that could just be Michael Beckley and
Just
his
change every key.
adaptations
Yeah,
of
sure,
it. I
yeah.
just don't know that particular fact.
Oh my gosh! So I didn't get it cleared up yet, Robert.
I'm sorry.
I know.
But see, if
I'll
you
have to
told me-
submit
I'll
it.
look it up afterwards and tell you.
But see, if somebody told me that a composer only wrote in one key, I would imagine it's the key of C, and it's only the white notes. But the black notes, I can't imagine that. It just sounds.
I know. That does seem bizarre, but I can't help you.
All right, we do have callers calling in. Let's take some of these calls. Good morning. Thank you for calling. You're on the air with Lourelene Snedeker.
Yeah, good morning, good morning. One of the things that Irving Berlin did do is in his will, he made provision for all of the royalties from God Bless America to be split between the Boy Scouts of America and the Girl Scouts of America.
That's correct.
Wow.
That is absolutely correct. He actually gave a number of pieces and the rights to
Oh, wow. I
a
didn't
number
know
of
that.
people. Yeah.
You know, we used to have a rabbi who would come in here all the time, and he loved telling us that Irving Berlin was Jewish and wrote
Yeah.
White Christmas. But I would say, I know.
Yeah.
How many,
He gave all the royalties of heaven to his wife as a wedding gift.
is that right?
Oh my
Wow,
gosh. Oh my gosh.
So, how many Christmas songs did he write? Is White Christmas in the show?
Of course it is.
Oh, it is. Okay, I was looking.
I mean, we have everything from White Christmas to Easter Parade to
Oh, yeah.
God Bless America. What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do?
Oh my gosh, that's such a pretty song.
all those old tunes that my grandmother used to play, for example. It's a cavalcade of songs that you are incredibly familiar with, and then there are a number of them you've never heard of in your life that are fascinating.
Really?
There's a number called Pack Up Your Sins that they do in the 20s section that is its primary focus is discussing a lot of the absurdities of the things that people would do in the 20s, packing people into phone booths, swallowing
Goldfish?
goldfish, pole sitting, wing walking.
Oh, really?
You know, I mean, we have running slides of all this material during this number where one of the fellows in the cast sings the solo as you see all the absurdities of the 1920s flashing by. It's great fun.
And you do have a few songs from the movie White Christmas in here.
Well,
In Act 2, What Can You Do with a General? Gee, I Was Back in the Army. I mean,
Correct.
those were actually in the movie.
correct, but the movie came long after. I mean,
right.
they used those songs to create the films and the musical. Obviously, in other contexts, Irving Berlin had these. But this is the fun thing. I mean, literally, he writes things like, what are we going to do with all the Jeeps? That's the name of a number.
Yeah.
Right.
Coming back from the war. What do you do with a general when he stopped being a general? I mean, he wrote about every situation you could imagine.
Yeah, It's amazing. Where did he write? Did he write it in New York?
Yes.
Yes. I always pictured a small building, like on the third floor or something like that. Do you know?
I can't help you. I do know that that the Tin Pan Alley offices were in some small, cramped, old building somewhere in Manhattan, but I don't know the specifics. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
You really seem to love the theater, your credentials. You created a theater, and you really care for the people that you are directing because you have to become one with each of the performers in order for them to really be in love with the production that they're doing.
Well, you have to have a rapport with them, and obviously we're all there because we love what we do. So there is automatically a common bonding there. And I've been doing it for 50 years, so I love what I do.
Tell us a little bit about your acting. You've worked with some big names, haven't you? I'm looking at the names here.
I have. I am what is, not that I haven't done my own starring material and that sort of thing, but I do a lot of second banana material, which personally I prefer. For example, while I've done Mame several times, I have done a great many Vera Charles roles, who is the second banana. She's funny. She's acerbic. She still has to dance. She still has to perform. She still has to do all of those things. But I've done MAME, for example, with Leslie Uggams was the last person I worked with. I've done it with Sally Kellerman. I've done it with Loretta Swit.
Wow.
I have gone to, rehearse shows in New York that have gone out on tour with these people and that sort of thing. I've spent the greater majority of my career on stage in regional theaters, working at like 23 theaters in Florida, and then I work in Cincinnati, New York, Virginia, North Carolina. I've done summer stock in North Carolina, and very fortunate because 50 years in doing regional theater is a challenge.
Well, it is truly people with your talent and your caliber of talent that make local theater as fabulous as it is in our community. Anyway, it's the only one I'm familiar with. We went to New York, and we were thinking about going to see that thing called Hamilton.
Yes.
And I said, forget it. It's like $800, and the tickets were in the back of the theater.
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow, that's $1,600 just to go see a play.
Exactly right.
But yet, it sells out every day.
Well, and there are ways to get cheaper tickets. There are ways to get cheaper tickets. There's TKTS that's in Times Square, and then there's a lottery every day.
Really?
At the theater for a certain number of tickets that you can acquire for way less money than that sort of thing. But you have to be willing to be there and to stand there and to wait for the lottery to occur.
I know exactly the TKTS place. I had no idea that was a discount place.
Yeah.
That's been there all my life, by the way. Not the way it looks now.
No.
But there's always been that TKTS.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right.
I never knew that. Wow.
And this is going to be a lot of fun because it sort of veers from the norm of what the Civic Theater has always put on.
Well, see, I don't know because unfortunately, while I have worked in a lot of theaters in Florida, I specifically, the last time I was here was, this is 100,000 years ago, and you may not even know of its existence. Golden Hills.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Been there.
Well, a number of my friends and companions in the theater were the technical directors there, a couple of directors of the productions early on.
It's a shame they tore that down.
Oh, it was a gorgeous facility.
Why did they tear it down, do you know?
I do not know. I know that they stopped doing theater and then were using the actual stage space to show horses for sale or something, and then ultimately the theater had its demise. It was a gorgeous facility.
It was. We went to at least one show there, I remember.
Yeah. And we're really lucky to have you.
Well, thank you. I have so enjoyed being in Ocala and eating at delightful restaurants and going to see what's in the area and available.
Home? Where's your home?
Well, at the moment, it's in Knoxville, Tennessee. My son is there with my, count them, 5 grandchildren. And I have a little getaway house in the middle of nowhere in South Carolina where I go to garden. But I used to spend the greater majority of my existence in Florida, and then I travel. I'm on the road all the time doing one show or another.
So the cold weather we're having is no big deal to you?
Nope.
You're fine with it.
Got it. Got it covered.
Lourelene, you have given us a great interview. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
It was just so nice talking about that. I love talking music. It's kind of my passion, too. Songwriting, as I mentioned, is my passion.
Right. Well, you need to see this because it's delicious music. And
delicious music. I like that.
Oh, no, it is. It's beautiful, and the orchestra sounds fantastic. And it's a lovely cast, and you'll enjoy yourself immensely.
What a nice interview you gave us. Thank you, Lourelene.
My pleasure.
We will be right back.